G'day YouTube, warbles on a lot here. Been doing a little bit more chainsaw carpentry and joinery even, assuming there's something of a difference. That there, you might call that chainsaw carpentry, rough as guts. And that was indeed the first bit of wood cut for this project. However, as time went along and the joinery went on, or the carpentry went on, it got to be a little bit better. But anyway, that would be the chainsaw carpentry. Structurally sound, not particularly elegant, certainly not pretty, but functional. And as I said in the earlier video, take that coach screw out and then come over and take that coach screw out. Thus, and the front panel comes off. So that's how the batteries get to be in the battery box. And the skin of the front panel fixes to the front panel frame, whereas the front panel frame fixes onto the battery box proper, and the lid hinges separately. And as I pointed out in an even earlier video, sequencing means that all the retrospective retro engineering to actually waterproof the shed shaped hole in the universe, which I thought was going to be a shed. That has to be done before you can put a battery box on it, because who wants to get in there underneath all that framework and try and play with silastic after you build the woodwork? Meanwhile, here we get into a little bit of, well, I think this is kind of funny. Chainsaw joinery. Very complicated joints. Good luck getting that one out. I had a mongrel of the time covering it up. However, that lines up with that. This was necessary to hold the floor tray in place, and then that lines up with that. Quite pleased with this. A not inconsiderable head scratcher of a job, but it should suffice, I reckon. And if it's not quite like I bought one, I reckon it will still get the job done. And these sheets of micro grooved corrugated iron, which I brought home from the dump probably 25 years ago, and used in making the heat exchanger that takes about half the radiant heat from the potbelly stove and dumps it into a cold air circuit, which then uses a thermosiphon principle to pump it into the next door bunk room, which is of course why a hillbilly in good standing should not ever throw anything away, even if you brought it home from the dump and you think you've already finished with using it, because you never know what else you're going to find it's going to be useful for at some point. Because I figured this thing probably needs to have rain and wind shields on the west side and a roof. And yeah, I do actually have enough to do the east side as well. Whereas this is destined to be skinned, not in metal, which is a heat sink, because on cold winter nights I don't want the metal to suck radiant heat out of the batteries and re-radiate it out to the universe at large. Remarkable what you can bring home from the dump back before they made scavenging outlawed. I think some of this fiberglass roofing material might make a very nice skin for a battery box, unless I'm wrong. And then for the door on the switch box, because it might be nice to be able to see the idiot lights from the other side of the clearing on the battery charged controller and the inverter and the motorcycle recharger. As I recall it, over here I've got something that should suffice to do that job. Look at that. It is, if you clean it, sort of grey, smoky, transparent polycarbonate sheet, which I reckon should go pretty well. Hanging on the front of that as a door, which will let me see red and green and whatever other coloured idiot lights the electronics wants to flash at me. So, there you go. That is how arty-farty, glitterati one can be with a Husqvarna 540 IXP. Well, so it seems to me. Warbles on like the YouTube. Ciao. Feeling pleased with myself, so I am.